Okay, so that is like perfect segue. My next question was, what's the earliest Dave Campfield film the public can get a hold of? So that'd be under surveillance.
Dark Chamber was the first feature film. And it was with Dark Chamber, that was another film. I have an obsessive work ethic, and sometimes people just can't see past budget. Why aren't you shooting on 35mm cameras or high def? And I found that when you make a fairly mainstream movie, but you don't have the same budget, you might get some good reactions from the film festival, but when the mainstream, like when your average viewer sees it, they can't differentiate between what's a lower budget film or not. So when that came out on Netflix and Blockbuster.com, I was seeing some reactions that were just perplexing to me. It's like, how are the critics liking this, and how is the audience sort of like reacting like dicks? And it's because they expected more production value. And if they can't necessarily, the average audience member can't necessarily articulate what's bothering them about the film. So I adopted the principle and the belief that so long as I'm stuck in a low-budget world, I want to create a film that's different than the rest of the mainstream films, stick out in a different way. And Chakarama, the same company that released Dark Chamber, asked me if I had a comedy horror. And I had these comedy characters, Caesar and Otto, and I decided that if I put them in a horror film, that might be something kind of akin to Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. If I do it right. I still didn't have the budget. In 2010, I still did not have the budget that they had back in 1948. My budget was a fraction of what they had in 1948. So I wouldn't be able to have the castles and all that fun stuff. I could have a bunch of bad effects, bad visual effects. So I thought, well, if I put them in something more trauma style, we have an opportunity to do something really unique here. Have like this absurd, off-the-wall comedy with these two characters that have no place in a horror film, and see what we can come up with, and see and that first storyline in Caesar Not a Summer Camp Massacre, which was my second feature, was a bit of a spoof of Sleepaway Camp. And after that was done, we all had a really, really good time making that. That seemed to get some good reactions. I thought, well, let's put them in another cheapy setting. How about the Evil Santa movie? Evil Santa suit's not going to, it's only going to cost, what, $70 at most? So, I created a storyline, a very non-generic storyline, as you could probably tell. I throw everything at the audience, That was the idea of the next place we could take them. And the next place we take them is Halloween. So, there's so many subgenres of the Christmas, of horror that you could delve into, which I love doing. And we even did you see Piggyzilla?
Not yet. Not yet. I will.
Giant monster movie.
Okay.
Cool. That was something else we were able to take on. I want to take on zombie, but not zombies. Someone was asking me, why don't you just do a zom-com? Because they're done. What was that film that Heretic released? Okay, in addition to the mainstream zom-coms like Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead, then there's a bunch of indie zombie, films as well, and indie zom-coms. And it's like, if it's been done, I sort of lose interest. Who's done Summer Camp Slasher Spoof? Who's done Christmas Slasher Spoof? It astounds me when a critic might say, and this is some of the positive critics that say it's a fairly routine concept. No, it's not. What are you on crack? What other evil Santa spoofs have there been? You can't say Santa's Sleigh and that Bill Goldberg movie. Those weren't spoofing Silent Night, Deadly Night, things like that. I'm just looking for the avenue that hasn't been taken, the road that hasn't been taken. And that's what I'm always looking for as a filmmaker.
So as a filmmaker, what filmmaking jobs do you do, personally?
Okay, so I write the scripts. Once in a while I'll co-write the story with somebody. I like playing Caesar because I know I will always be on set. And when you have a film this low budget, you can really rely on yourself.
Yeah, you show up on time, right?
Absolutely. I'm there when the director's there. So I do a lot of jobs that I shouldn't. Thank God I have someone like Summer Ferguson who plays Allison in my film, and she's also assistant director. People like that, and Paul plays Otto. They're helping out with crew work. But for the most part, directing, once you go into somebody else photographs it, but once you go into post-production, it's all me. it's pretty much I'm the guy doing everything from the moment the film was in the can. So then it's the editing, it's the sound design, it's music editing. Basically, there's pre-existing pieces of music that were written for the original Caesar Honor, when I'm shaping it, reshaping it, taking older pieces of music that were written for my first film and changing the pitch and adding, finding sound effects. So any sound effect you hear in the film was probably there because of me. Any bit of scoring, I had to reshape it. All of the editing, and on these Caesar Honor films, this is wild editing. I can compliment other indie films for having well-paced editing, but they are not doing the kinds of transitions that I'm doing. I am doing like so many different things that I didn't even think were capable, or even possible with editing software. There are things in there no one will ever know that I edited. I could literally combine 2 takes. If I don't like the way that an actor said one line, myself included, if I don't like the way that a line was said in 1 take, I could literally dub that take with the first half of a line from the subsequent take, integrated into that take. So I'm reshaping performances. I'm creating, like, say, like the camera cut short, we didn't get as much length into an individual shot. I find ways of stretching it out. So I am just working whatever magic I can when I'm in post. And there are many effects that are in there that people don't even realize are effects. So everything.
Everything,
so your answer is, in post-production, I do everything.
Right. Okay. You probably have just kind of answered this next question, but I'll ask it anyway. So out of the jobs that you do, what is it that you enjoy the most?
There are times that I like acting the best. There are times that I like writing the best. There's times that I like directing the best. There's times that I like editing the best. They all have moments that really shine. And there's moments in pretty much all of them that you hate. So basically, it depends on what mood I am and how I and it depends on the day, pretty much.
When I ask you the question, basically, will be the answer. So
right.
Yeah.
Today I like writing because I was just writing, and I was having a good time with it.
Fair enough. What would you say are the pros and cons of working in the low-budget world?
No one says you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, or for the most part. My effects guy can say that because he's got a very limited budget, and I tell him, okay, so how do we make that work? And then he comes up with creative solutions about how we can accomplish effect within his tools, the tools that he has for budget, which is always good. That's my directing style. I always try to work within your limitations. So let's back that question up for a second. I got distracted because I know what my answer was, but what was that question again?
What are the pros and cons of working in the low budget
pros and cons. Okay, yeah. And then there's the studio people. No one's really telling me I can or can't do that, which is great. I mean, is it working against me? Depends. Maybe, maybe not. But at least I'm really creating the films that I want to make with the Caesar and Otto films. I think if there was money involved, there'd be very different kinds of films, and I would have a lot more studio influence. And would they be better? It'd probably be better for more people, but there's hopefully like a lot of people that see how off the wall this is and just embrace it entirely. And some people that are just like, what the hell are you doing? I don't get this stupid film. Like, all right, there's nothing you can do. This is the film I wanted to make. And I had a great time making it, and it's something that I would like. At least I believe it. I'd be messed up if I watched my own film objectively from afar, if I had nothing to do with it, and said, "Wow, this really sucks." Yeah. But I am convinced that it matches my own sensibility in terms of what I like in films, and I like a vast array of different kinds of films.
I see that your first film, Dark Chamber, seems to be pretty different from the Caesar and Otto franchise that you followed it with. What made you decide to go to comedy?
First thing, when I was very young, I had a comical sensibility, and I think I wanted to do comedy more than anything else for a while. So returning to that, and there's certain things that comedy affords you that dramatic cannot. It's not, when you're shooting a comedy film, it's less demanding, I think, because you can do a take. You just do a dramatic take like this, It just comes to me like that. I can just be this character in a moment. Tell me I'm Caesar, I understand this guy. I know what he's all about. And if it's over dramatic, that's okay. It doesn't matter if that's it. Just I feel like I don't. It's comedy is less restricted. Some might disagree with me. I feel like comedy is less restricted and more liberating to make. And because of the budgets, I feel like I've been trapped to do. I feel like I've only been able to do comedy because the last thing I want to do is wait for that big budget to come in. I have to stay active. So comedy is what my budgets afford me for the time being. And if I have an opportunity, like Fear the Reaper is going to have more of that budget. It's going to have more of a budget, so I'm ready to get back. It's dramatic, and I put my dramatic hack back on, and off we go again.
So what would you say are the big influences that really spurred the Caesar and Otto? Well, obviously Silent Night for Caesar and Otto's Deadly Xmas, but just in general, what are the influences that spurred the Caesar and Otto series?
Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein and meet the Invisible Man, meet the Mummy, that whole cross-section of comedy horror films, which I love. All the Edgar Wright work. Absolutely love Edgar Wright's films. I wanted to be able to make a unique kind of a very unique kind of B movie that I felt like wasn't being made. So, but those are the. I mean, there's so many things that I could credit, but probably at the top of my head can't. Even I think was an influence was also the Simpsons Treehouse of Terror episodes, as well.
That's awesome. I found Caesar and Otto's Deadly Xmas to be pretty much a straight up silly comedy with just a bit of gore. Would you consider it horror at all, or is it just meant to be funny?
I'll just say it's a 90% comedy and 10% horror. It's almost like you throw a slapstick comedy with a horror in a horror setting. I mean, there are moments where it begins to teeter on being a real horror film, but that's as close as you get. You teeter. The opening scene in the Old West is somewhat of a serious opening, all things considered. It sets up the story for where it goes, ultimately. There's a scene between Linnea and Darren Miller, Linnea Quigley and Darren Miller, which teeters on being a horror film as well. And then, obviously we go back to Silly World. But it's got some of the filmmaking tenets of a horror film and like how you move the camera and how you let a scene unfold. But, I mean, that only helps us to play the joke straighter in those horror moments.
So you have quite the roster of cameos in this film. How did you get so many well-known faces into your movie?
Well, I've just been around. I've met people. They see how serious I am about wanting to do good work. My first film I ever did was with Felissa Rose, and she's been in my films since then. And she sees what I'm about. I'm not, I want this to be my livelihood. I love cinema, and I want them, and I feel like my work reflects it. To give performances that are fairly well shaped and something that they can be proud of in terms of their role. Because a lot of times, actors are rarely given material that they could sink their teeth into, and I feel like I'm able to deliver characters. When has she ever played a character like this? She's playing this version of herself. And it's so satirical, and I don't think she's given that kind of opportunity. That's when it gets really insulting, like when I read a review that said these actors are capable of so much more. Bullshit. They're given generic roles that do not have anything but other than give us some expositions and be sexy. No, I'm giving them characters, and that's why they're responding. And they see that I care about my work. So it's as simple as that. If they see that in me, and I come recommended because I'm always kind to them. I'm always respectful of them. I always very much appreciate what they do. So attitude is part of it, and also how seriously I take this. Regardless if it's a stupid comedy like a Caesar and Otto, or if it's a serious film like Dark Chamber.
So in the course of our conversation here, you've really kind of answered this next question, but I typed it out, so I'm going to ask it anyway. At the end of the Caesar and Otto's Deadly Xmas, the film says the characters will return for another adventure. Do you plan on just making Caesar and Otto movies for the foreseeable future, or do you have other non-Caesar films in store? And
I keep thinking I'm going to do a non-Caesar film, and then Caesar keeps creeping back. It's like, well, let me go do Fear the Reaper. Like Fear the Reaper, I've been on and off with for years, and Caesar films keep finding their way back in. I've done pretty much like Caesar on a Summer Camp Massacre, Caesar on Me in the House of Dracula, Caesar on Me Dracula's Lawyer. Those are both short films, and then Deadly Xmas, and then Piggyzilla and Otto's first job. I just have to at least take one film break from it, at least. Or maybe indefinitely, because if people don't really respond to this and they just don't get the joke, then I see no point in continuing with it. But they're going on the shelf for, I'm hoping, at least one film. But before that happens, I'm finishing the treatment on Paranormal Halloween. By the end of tonight, that treatment is done and it's going on the shelf for at least a little while.
So Fear the Reaper is going to be your next plan?
That's the idea. Okay. But you never know. Life has a weird way of surprising you. Someone can, knock on your door and say, "Hey, I want you to direct a sitcom about a pilot about that takes place in the gym, etc., etc." For example, that was a conversation I had tonight. I might, different projects come their way. So I will do what seems to be the best choice to do. I believe that to be Fear the Reaper.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add to this?
Is there anything else? No, just go to the Facebook page. Find me on Facebook. Let's be friends. Find Caesar and Otto's Deadly Xmas on Facebook. Check out the film. Check out, you might love or hate what I do, but I promise you, it is going to be a very distinct vision. It's going to be something very particular. And that's all I have to say on that.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your time tonight, Dave, and thanks for sending the movie over, and we'll look forward to see what else you have for the future.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.